Hello. Okay. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse. Seen it a couple of days ago, and here is my review, my thoughts on the latest MCU movie, the latest MCU release. And so I've been on a bit of a journey with this one, sort of kind of two journeys really. So the one being the release, sort of the run up to the release of this movie, and my feelings around the character of Wanda, played by Elizabeth Olsen. So what I mean by journeys is, when the character of Wanda was originally introduced into the MCU, I kind of struggled to really connect to the character. I wasn't particularly fond of this character portrayed by Elizabeth Olsen, and I wasn't quite sure why. And it's only until recently have I discovered why. And it wasn't until WandaVision did I really start to come around to the character of Wanda and really connect to her on an emotional level. And I just really liked how all of a sudden it seemed to be that this character had a meaning, a sort of a depth to it. And the writing was a lot better. How the character was sort of brought to life was a lot better. And WandaVision for me was a surprise, a massive surprise. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. So I was really looking forward to seeing her story continue with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse. And so I found it quite funny how I ended up not really liking the character to actually really liking this character. And I would regard her as being one of my favourites within the MCU. And same sort of journey with the actual release, the run up to the movie. I can't say I was really looking forward to it. I knew I was going to check it out, but it wasn't really one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And I was like, oh, whatever kind of thing. And I actually quite enjoyed the first movie. So again, I can't really say why. I just wasn't really sort of like, massively looking forward to the film. And then my excitement levels sort of rose when I sort of found out that Sam Raimi was, coming back into the sort of the superhero genre and was going to direct a superhero film again. That's when I really kind of perked up. And then you had sort of the first kind of reviews and the first reactions trickling out. And that's sort of the first, sort of that 1 week before the release, that's when I sort of really started to look forward to it. And one of my major concerns were that that the studio, the producers, were not going to allow Sam Raimi to be Sam Raimi. He's a director with a unique style, a distinct look and style, and I just was afraid they weren't going to allow him to put his stamp on this movie and actually feel like a Sam Raimi movie. And then when I'm hearing through these first reactions that actually it is very much Sam Raimi, I was on board. So I ended up really enjoying this movie. I did enjoy this movie a lot, and I really enjoyed seeing Wanda's journey, her story continue. I do feel though that her story, her journey overshadows Doctor Strange's sort of journey through the story, and kind of overshadows the sort of the film. And I mean that in a good way, because I actually wanted to see more of Wanda's story, but as a result, and because of what the film was trying to set up in regards to certain new characters and the multiverse and all of that, there's a lot going on in this film. I felt like the film felt just a tad messy as a result of that, but the overall experience for me was just so enjoyable. But like I said, with sort of Wanda's story being the heart, I felt. I think Wanda's story in this, the Scarlet Witch, it was the anchor of the movie. It was the weight of the movie. And I really liked it, but it also made it kind of feel like, what kind of film is this? Are we watching a Doctor Strange movie, or are we watching... It just didn't kind of have a sort of a main objective, you could say. But again, it's not really a major complaint for me, because I really liked sort of that continuation, as I said, of Wanda's story. But Elizabeth Olsen's performance, now I dug her performance in WandaVision. and it was I felt like a side to Elizabeth Olsen as a actress that I hadn't seen as up until that point in the MCU, and in this she just dials it up again. And there's this one particular moment where she's talking to Doctor Strange, and I'm like, she's good. Like, her performance in this just felt very authentic, very real, very honest, and you could feel her pain. I thought she was incredibly good in this, and yeah, I just enjoyed watching it on the screen and watching her character evolve again and grow. But because of all of what was going on in this movie, you know, with regards to the multiverse, the new character, America Chavez, I think that's how you pronounce the surname, it did feel a little bit messy, and the pacing was just a tad out. I just think there were moments where they just sort of went very fast and very swift, and then it would kind of slow down. And then, yeah, so it was just overall, the overall experience was a little bit messy, but an enjoyable one. Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, he's great. I really like him in the role. And again, his performance, he gives a really good, solid performance. But sort of his emotional journey, this kind of very similar to Wanda's in a way, and how they sort of their stories kind of end up are very similar. As I, you know, this is a spoiler-free review, so I don't really want to say too much. But I just felt like Wanda's story and her emotional sort of arc kind of overshadowed Doctor Strange's. But again, yeah, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch is great in the role. And so for me, the most important aspect of this was for the film to feel like a Sam Raimi film. Like I said, he has a distinct style, and it did. I mean, I can't say that the entire film sort of had a Sam Raimi's, you know, sort of feel about it, but you could tell that he had directed this movie. I mean, especially the first two acts had a Sam Raimi moments dotted throughout. One particular creepy scene with Wanda and reflections, I just loved how that played out, and it just oozed Sam Raimi. And then you've got the third act then, which I felt was, you know, very Sam Raimi, and it has those horror elements and wacky and imaginative and just creepy, and I loved it. I really loved it. I had a big smile on my face because I was like, yes, they've allowed him to sort of do his thing. It still retains that Marvel formula, that Marvel, you know, the MCU DNA. It's still running throughout the movie, but I feel like they definitely give Sam Raimi more kind of like, just do your thing. Not, like, as I said, it's elements, there's moments of it through that first sort of two acts, but then it's almost like the producers said, do you know what, for that final act, just fucking go for it. And yeah, I loved it. I loved it as a result. It was also quite surprisingly violent in places as well. Very, you know, very small moments, but they were quite violent. And again, I like that. For me, it showed that the MCU is actually maturing, and it's getting a little bit darker and just a little bit edgier, which I have liked. And perhaps it's intentional. Obviously, you know, I mean, a lot of us were quite young when the MCU sort of when we were first introduced to Iron Man, and perhaps that's how they intend this to go. Perhaps the MCU is going to become a lot more darker and violent and edgier as its audience grows older. But at the same time, you know, remembering there's going to be a new, younger audience as well. Perhaps, I don't know, but I did sort of appreciate that. I do really feel like it pushed that 12A rating. It's a 12A year in the UK, and I felt there were moments in this movie that really pushed that. Some really great action scenes in the film, some exciting action scenes in the film. There's one really imaginative action scene in the movie, and it requires music. It involves music. That's all I'm going to say about it. And I was just sat there, and I was like, I just got sucked in. And I mean, I was sucked into this movie anyway. But there's this one particular moment that it just felt like it was improvised. And it was like, oh, actually, why don't we try this? Why don't we do this? That's how it felt. It was so imaginative on how this fight scene played out, and I loved it. So yeah, and that's my overall that sort of sums up my overall experience with this movie. Was it absorbed me in for 2 hours. I got lost. I enjoyed the ride. It's not without its faults. Yes, the pacing is out. I think the editing could have been a little bit better, a little bit smoother. And I do feel like they perhaps tried to cram an awful lot in. The film felt short. I felt like because of the stories they were trying to sort of tell, I felt like it needed an additional 30 minutes. That's just me, but that's my feeling. Because even though I enjoyed sort of Wanda's journey and where she ends up in this, I just felt like I needed a little bit more. And as a result, just felt a tad rushed maybe, and perhaps just a tiny bit underwhelming. The overall experience is enjoyable. By the conclusion, I perhaps was a little bit underwhelmed, but that does not take away from the fact that this is a very enjoyable movie. And yeah, it's a very creative, fun and imaginative movie, and there are a couple of post-credit scenes. I will say, please remain for the very last one. Some people refer to it being as a throwaway scene, but it's my sense of humour, and it just really made me chuckle. I was actually the only one that did laugh. For the one, there was a few of us that did stay in the showing, but it was just my sense of humour, and I liked it. I didn't mind the new character, America Chavez. She served a purpose to the story, but that was about it for me. Again, very similar to how they introduced Wanda into the MCU. I couldn't quite connect to it on a level where I felt like the writers wanted me to, and the director wanted me to. I just felt like she served more of a sort of plot device just to move the story along. And the more I thought about it and reflected on it, I felt like, well, perhaps that's what the intention was with Wanda to begin with, but there was always a plan maybe. So eventually, perhaps I might end up again being quite emotionally invested into this character, American Chavez. I'm not that familiar with the character. I've never read the comic books with her, but just sort of how she's wrote into the story and how she's sort of brought to life. I mean, sort of the performance is okay. The performance is alright. I just felt like she was there to serve a certain purpose, just to move the narrative along, to get us sort of immersed into the multiverse and all of that. Great score by Danny Elfman. I mean, I love Danny Elfman anyway, and he does a great score here. And so yeah, I enjoyed the movie. It's an imaginative, fun ride that sort of opens up a world of possibilities within the MCU. There was a couple of moments which were very nostalgic when we're introduced to certain characters. And again, I'm not going to say too much. This is a spoiler-free review, but there is this one particular moment, and it was great because it really sort of brought me back to being a child again. I was slightly underwhelmed at the end of it, but I think that's because he was just sort of really trying to juggle so much. And I just felt like the film needed to be at least 15 to 30 minutes longer for it to have just sort of run a little bit more smoothly. But overall, it was a really enjoyable experience. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, but I definitely recommend checking it out because it's 2 hours where you just get lost into this mad, fun and imaginative world. And yeah, so yeah, I will be giving Doctor Strange in the Multiverse a 7 out of 10. What did you guys think? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed watching some Welsh guy ramble on about a movie for however long this video takes, then please hit that like and hit that subscribe button. It will mean a lot to me. And so yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.